I, Dr. Poonam Kamble, GS of PG Council, Dr. GD Paul Foundation, YMT Homeopathic Medical College, Kharghar, Navi Mumbai, welcomes you all in today's webinar. I request all participants kindly mute will take your questions in question answer session. Now, I would request Dr. Arohi ma'am to take further introduction.
Good morning, everyone. Myself, Dr. Arohi Mate, Assistant Professor in Department of Medicine, would like to give you a brief introduction on why we had selected this topic for today's national webinar. Usually, we think that depression means sadness and it occurs only in adults. But the reality is, it can occur in all ages and in different forms. Depression is different from normal blues. Let's see one case. 2 months ago, we came across one case. A 6-year-old male patient came to our OPD with complaint of recurrent headache and stomachache since 1 month. He was looking sad, becoming sensitive to rejection, also had changes in his sleep pattern and troubles in concentration. We referred this case to a psychiatrist for the opinion, and the doctor diagnosed this condition as a pediatric depression. Now, this is the clinical condition which is the most neglected one in our society. Just because a child seems sad doesn't mean that they have depression. But if this depression or sadness is persistent and it interferes the daily routine activities, schoolwork, that means the child has depressive illness. So in this webinar, we will understand how to approach a case of depression in various stages of life. Over to Dr. Poonam.
Thank you, ma'am. Our speaker for today, Dr. Tehsin Kasim Ali, MBBS, DPM, is consultant psychiatrist and psychotherapist. She is a mental health expert and successfully practicing at Noor and Habib Hospital, Mumbai. Madam is actively involved in various mental health awareness programs. Madam also runs her YouTube channel to create mental health awareness. I would request ma'am to enlighten us with today's topic, depression in different stages of life. Over to you, ma'am.
Hi, sorry, just give me a moment, please. Hi, am I audible and visible?
Yes, ma'am. Please start your video.
Hi, I'm Dr. Tehsin Kasim Ali, and good morning to all. So today what we're trying to do is a very basic topic, which is called as depression. It is the second leading cause of disability in life, the way we lead our life and causing hampering in it. And it is one of the most neglected things that we see. I'm sorry, there's some problem with the video. Arohi, can you take over with the slideshow, please? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Just a second.
Done. So whenever I see a patient, the first question, obviously, we are talking to unknown individuals. They don't know us. We don't know us. So the first question out of any courtesy is, hi, how are you? And the 95%, 99% of the times that I'm getting the answer is fine. But underlying, when you gradually start talking to them, then you understand how difficult it is for them, how difficult it is to portray that they are fine. They're struggling on a daily basis just to act, to make their family feel that they are fine. So let's understand what is depression. Now, depression, like diabetes, hypertension, you may have symptoms like, I'm having headache, I'm having giddiness, I'm not feeling a little bit off. Diabetes, like it is silent, but then you may have symptoms where people can understand, okay, routinely there's something off, the doctor will suggest that, okay, madam, get your sugars tested. But depression is something that there is no certain proof to it. You get any blood test done, you get any investigations, you get any MRI, unless you talk to the patient or you see the behavioral changes, you don't understand what is happening. So even if I speak to the relative first, they tell me, no, she's absolutely fine. I don't know why. She just wanted to come to you. Okay, so there's a lot of stigma where it comes that, we don't want to go to a psychiatrist, मैं पागल नहीं हूँ. The whole basic understanding of psychiatry is what we have. Now, very important that, see, we are going to feel low in different aspects of life. There is no day which is perfect. We are going to have tiny mini speed breakers, small and big speed breakers in our life. But if you're feeling sad, it is a pervasive disorder. It means it is consistent, it is persistent, and there are different ranges of symptoms that are there. If I make 10 patients with depression stand together and give me symptoms, they may give me variable symptoms. It's not going to be that, it's a standard picture where each patient is going to give you same symptoms. Now, lifetime risk, per se, it is seen more commonly in females, around 20 to 26%, and male it is 8 to 12%. I'm not going to stick around with a lot of figures and stuff because I want to make this more clinical oriented. Now, what are the risk factors? Like, if you have 5 siblings, all of them may not develop depression. Some may not. So one, biological factors, genetic factors, like if there's someone who's already had a family history of depression or anxiety or any other psychiatric illnesses, then they have higher chances of developing depressive symptoms. Now, what happens with depression is a lot of people will say, no, no one has it in our family, but then it's silent. Like, we don't understand that patient is probably suffering with it. They just pull on with life till they can. If there are some hormonal changes, so one very important test that we keep doing is a thyroid test. So if there is a deterioration or if there is any alteration in the whole system, your pituitary adrenal axis, of course, you can have depressive symptoms along with it. Altered circadian rhythm. Now, there's a reason why there's day, there's night, there's morning, there's afternoon. So if you're going to play around with your body, it is going to kick back sometime or the other. Psychological factors, obviously for us, when we are growing up, our parents are the first teachers that we have. So they are our role models. So how we learn to cope up with situations through them, that is a learned behavior that comes up. Then separation or early loss of maternal attachment, if there has been a separation or divorce or parental conflicts or death of one of the parents. And obviously extremely important, personality type. Why would we say personality? Because see, a very simple example, if there is a dog barking, so every individual will behave in a different manner. Someone may, start jumping out there and get scared or start running away, or someone may just pass by as if it doesn't even bother them. Someone may just stand and, try to pacify the dog. So each individual is going to behave in a different manner in a similar situation, depending upon their coping mechanisms and the personality types. Socioeconomic factors, of course, paisa bolta hai. So poverty, low literacy, because obviously that is because you need money for everything, and if there is poverty, then you have difficulty getting further education, or for whatever reasons to run the house or meet the basic needs. A lot of time kids have to leave their studies and get back to earning. And if there's low literacy, obviously till a certain age they can or to a certain standard they can progress in life even monetarily, otherwise it becomes difficult. Modernization, urbanization, migration, globalization. So basically adjustment issues over there. Then distressing social relationships, lack of friends, too much of peer pressure, too much of intervening from a lot of relatives or extended families. Domestic, intimate partner violence. So obviously that is going to hamper our well-being. And natural disasters and conflict, like in the current scenario that we are seeing with the COVID that is happening. cultural factors, religion, caste, beliefs, and attitudes. Those create a lot of discrepancies in our point of view. Some may accept it, some may respect it, some may not. So when we feel that, a lot of times if the opinions of others or their outlook is very different from us, or if they don't, they are unable to respect what we feel, then it may create havoc with a few of us. Next slide. So just to understand a few more factors that are very important. Now, mental health is not just mental health. How I like to put it in the best possible way is there always has to be a balance between your physical health and your mental health. If you have fever, you're not going to be feeling that good and fresh. And if you are feeling a little dull, maybe because of exam pressure or something, obviously physically you're not going to be feeling that great. Now, we have spoken about the biological factors, genetic factors, major life changes. There are certain medications, specifically in old age, which can cause depression. Substance use, again, we will be talking about later in adolescence. And very, very few times it is idiopathic, wherein, you try to find reasons in different variable ways, but you're unable to find so. Now, what happens now? What exactly is depression, since we don't have any proof and we can't really understand why it is happening? So, as we all know, we are all doctors. So, our body works on some neurotransmitters. Here in depression, what is the most important one is serotonin. For some apparent reason, either the production is not adequate, either the absorption is not adequate, or a combination of both. So, if we see in the first part of the diagram that is normal, there are certain number of serotonin receptors which are supposed to be present. Now in depression, because of the previously mentioned reasons, the production is reduced or the availability of serotonin is reduced. And because of that, there are depressive symptoms, which we'll be talking about in detail. And when we are giving medications, like there's a lot of misconception about psychiatric illnesses that, it's addictive, or you have to take it lifelong, or, it's not good for your brain, and, a lot of misconceptions. It is not. So how we are giving supplementations of insulin and diabetics, or, as simple as vitamin D and calcium in deficiencies, it is a very similar thing that we are doing over here. Here it is just that we don't have proof. Now, if you go to see, there's a huge diagnostic criteria for depression. We'll just try to see it in the simplest form that we can. Now, they have to be persistent. Okay, it is not that, sometimes there's a switch in mood, sometimes you're okay, sometimes you're not okay. I mean, with some change in environment, it will happen, but it is pervasive. Like whatever you do, it remains the same, your mood remains the same, and it's just consistent. It has to last for more than 2 weeks. And there has to be depressed mood and anhedonia. Anhedonia means loss of interest in any activities which were pleasurable previously. There will be sleep disturbances, there will be psychomotor agitation or retardation, which clinically the presentation will be that, either they are just lying down in bed or keeping quiet in one corner, or they become very aggressive and irritable. There's fatigue, there's always tiredness. They will always tell you that, I feel looseness, I don't feel any energy, it's difficult to even get up and get a glass of water. There is executive dysfunction, which means that, if they are as simple as a homemaker, she's somehow making mistakes in the amount of spices that she's putting. This quality of her cooking that is deteriorating, or she's not being able to do her regular functions like taking care of the house and the kids, which she was doing beautifully previously. She's not able to do that. There's a lot of feeling of worthlessness, like, nothing good is going to happen, life is just hopeless, kuch nahi acha hoga. There's a lot of guilt that, I'm not able to do my daily functions properly, and why am I becoming a burden on my family, and why are things always going wrong in my life. So, probably there was this patient just I saw 2 days back, and he's like, पक्का कोई पाप किया है जिसकी वजह से ये सब मुझे भगवान दे रहा है. So there's a lot of guilt. Few patients have suicidal ideations or thoughts of death. So they'll feel like, there is a train going. Why don't I just jump in front of the train? Or the bus is moving. I feel like just jumping out of the bus, or I can see the knife in front of me. So I just feel like slitting myself. Now, this can be part of unipolar depression, or it can be part of bipolar depression, but we are not getting into that. Now, there is a bedside scale that is there in SAT cages. So these are basic mnemonics which help us understand and remember it in the simplest way that we can. Loss of interest in activities. Parents may come that oh, she used to love playing with kids, but now she has stopped going out of the house. Either the patient is sleeping more or sleeping less, or not feeling fresh after getting up in the morning. Their appetite changes. Normally, there's usually a reduction in appetite, but there are some atypical symptoms where there can be increase in appetite, where they are stress eating. Depressed mood, like, they'll say that, she used to be very happy and chirpy and, always laughing, making other people laugh. But now she's always having this grin on her forehead and, not happy and not talking much. That changes in activity level. Someone might say that, he used to go for a walk regularly. His friends used to call him. So, they used to play cricket and stuff, but now they're not doing it. Excess of guilt that we have already spoken about. Loss of energy, which we have spoken about. Suicidal thoughts, plans, and attempts. If we plan to do something on suicide later, we can have a very detailed discussion on that. So in your general clinic, in your basic practice, even if you remember this much, it's going to create a lot of help to a lot of people who are suffering with this. Now, there can be mild symptoms, moderate and severe. So it depends on the severity of symptoms and the number of symptoms that are there. Now, there are very few symptoms, and the patient is saying nahi main chala rahi hu, and this is what usually happens. A lot of times patient come that we want only counseling and we don't want medications per se. But if you're coming with mild symptoms, it is easier to do that. But as the severity of severity of the illness increases, it is very difficult to just work with counseling or psychotherapy as we would understand it. Now, when the number of symptoms increase and it is causing more dysfunctionality in their daily routine, then it becomes moderate. And severe is, usually it is severe, the higher end of moderate or severe when the patients get them, when there's a lot of behavioral issue, or the person has stopped doing the daily housework, or they've become very irritable, or they're constantly crying. Till the patient is quiet, a lot of times they don't get help. When they start getting aggressive or not doing the daily routine, it is then that the family usually understands that something is wrong and we need to seek help. And that also, most of the times you'll find them going to general physicians or other doctors rather than a psychiatrist. Now, there are 5 Ds of depression. There's always distress, there's dysfunction, they feel defeated, there's distance from relatives, they don't feel like talking to anyone, they want to stay aloof, and there's disregard for anything that is special in life. Now, 2 very, very important things, and the first things that the patient may come up with is loss of interest in previously pleasurable activities and sadness or irritability. I mean, if you're able to just ask them these 2 things, and they say, I feel like that. First, I used to love cooking. Now I don't feel like cooking. I really have to push myself. Or, हाँ नहीं चिड़चिड़ापन बढ़ गया ऐसा लगता है. Then if these 2 signs or symptoms are coming up, then you should really, poke in to see if there's depressive symptoms. Now, additional signs are this feeling of emptiness. A patient just yesterday, he was asking me, who am I? What am I? Where do I get that answer? So there's this feeling of emptiness. There's no confidence. They feel that, their existence doesn't really matter. They're unable to enjoy anything, like they're going to a party or they're going for a vacation, but they're just stuck up in their own thought process because they're suffering, not that they're doing it on purpose. But the people are enjoying, they are laughing, they are giggling. These people, they're just trying to put up a smile to show them that probably I'm okay, but personally they are not able to feel happy. There's hopelessness. They feel that no one can help me, kuch acha nahi hoga. Now, a very important thing that a lot of times we don't even consider asking, or patients feel ashamed to talk about it, or they are reluctant to talk about it, are the sexual desires. Now, sexual desires are something which are, sex is something which is a very basic need of any human being or animal per se. And once you have a partner, somewhere that sexual desires do come up, and post marriage, it is felt that one of the core, functions, or the core part of a married life. So a lot of people may say that, I don't feel like it, but since my husband or my wife wants it, so I just go along with it, but it doesn't give me a high. Then there's a loss of warm feelings for family and friends. Like there was a new mother whose kids were hardly 1.5-year-old twins, and she said, "क्या है बच्चे पल जाएंगे ना, जिनके मर जाते हैं parents वो भी तो पल जाते हैं." So that the warmth that a mother would have for a child, of course she loves her children, but then she's struggling so much within herself that she feels that I can't handle this. It's okay, they'll manage. So the warm feelings and the regard they have for their family and friends, or basically the people they love, even there is, that warmth does go down. There's a lot of feeling of self-blame and guilt. Like they'll say, "हाँ मेरी वजह से ही हुआ." Yesterday I saw a 26-year-old young kid, pretty well educated, doing a very good job. But he feels that, मैं पनौती हूँ, मैं जहाँ जाता हूँ, मैं जो करता हूँ, it's not going to happen well. I worked till 12 o'clock at night. I arranged everything. Next day morning, I got up. So I got a call that, the job is cancelled. Or I was having this relationship and, there were some complications. So it didn't work out. So मैं पनौती हूँ तो ऐसे ही होगा. My parents are not feeling well. They keep falling ill. So since I was born, since I was a little kid, ever since I've come, either I am sick or, my parents are sick. So probably मैं पनौती हूँ. So, they blame themselves for even things which are not in their control. There's lack of self-esteem. They don't feel confident enough. There's no self-love, to probably go and chat with someone, or just say a hi or hello, or, just if they are going to a shop just to ask for the price of that dress that they like. It's very difficult because that confidence is not there. What if whatever I speak comes out wrong, or what if people make fun of me, or what if my pronunciation doesn't go appropriately? So there's a lot of self-doubt because of lack of confidence and self-esteem. A lot of times they'll say that, I just cry, I don't know why, but I can't stop myself, and I just cry for no apparent reason. किसी ने कुछ भी बोल दिया या बिना बोले भी I'm crying. I lie on my bed and tears just start rolling down, and some people don't even understand that they're crying. They'll say नहीं आंखें भीग जाती हैं, पता नहीं क्यों, but it happens. So that acceptability also, that probably I'm crying, that doesn't come in. Now, basically, if you ask a relative, this is what they will say, because they can only see what is happening exteriorly as to the behavioral changes of the individual. So they will say that, if it is a housewife or something, so pehle humko 2 baje khana mil jata tha, the food used to be ready, all the work was done. But now even till 4 o'clock, she is just logging, and there are fights every day because we are not getting food in until 4 o'clock. So there's generalized slowing, or someone who is been working, doing a job on a regular basis. So they always used to do things on target, whatever time was given to them, the whatever thing they was, whatever errands they were supposed to do, it was always on time. But now their boss is always scolding them or something because they're always running late for things. There's neglect of responsibilities and appearances. Like if, someone who is used to being ready, and there are a lot of surprises that you get in the first visit and the third visit of patients, where if it's a female, they're just coming, बाल भी हाथ से ऐसे बनाए हैं, forget about the scarf is ulta, or they're least interested in how they are coming. And the third, probably not the second visit exactly, but third visit you see them coming with all good foundation, kajal, lipstick. So that is also clinically how you would understand that a patient is doing better. They just don't care how they're doing. And even at home or any office work that they're doing, just ठीक है, धक्का दे दे के गाड़ी चल रही है. That is how they really put it. Most of the patients will always complain that, I keep forgetting मैं कहाँ क्या रखता हूँ, 2 मिनट पहले किसने क्या बोला है. I keep forgetting now because there are a lot of thought processes that are going on. So obviously, if you're not concentrating on a particular thing because of the backhand excessive thoughts that they're going, so you're not able to concentrate. If you're not able to concentrate, short-term memories are going to go to long-term memory, and ultimately you'll feel that I'm forgetting a lot. Suicidal thoughts, feelings, behavior of a lot of patients say that, I have those thoughts, but there are some things which are holding me back, maybe my family, maybe my parents, maybe my kids, or maybe, in Islam it's like it's haram, so maybe that part is holding them back, and a few people do act on it and have suicidal attempts. They have difficulty making decisions. Now, a lot of this has to do because they're not able to concentrate, so they're not having clear thoughts. Plus, they have a lack of confidence and self-esteem. Now, as doctors, this is the most important thing that we will see in clinic. I mean, not me, but you all as physicians will see in clinic. They'll see कि नींद नहीं आ रही है. The first complaint that they have, or the only complaint that they will have, is that नींद नहीं आ रही, मैं लेट सो रहा हूँ, या बार बार आँख खुल जा रही है, या सुबह 6 बजे सो रहा हूँ और फिर 8 बजे उठ जा रहा हूँ, फ्रेश नहीं लग रहा है. Sleep is all that the complaint is, and most of the times what happens is people just give benzodiazepines, or they're just trying to treat that one particular symptom, that is sleeplessness. There's lack of energy. The patient will say कि शायद hemoglobin कम हो गया है, हाथ पैर ढीले लगते हैं, कुछ मजा नहीं आता है, काम भारी पड़ रहा है, बहुत जल्दी थक जा रहा हूँ. There's loss of appetite. This a lot of times, if you inquire, then you'll get to know, okay, they're not feeling like eating, but most of the times you really have to probe it. There's weight loss or weight gain. Around 20% of weight loss or weight gain is something that we consider to be a part of the illness. Obviously, if you don't feel like eating because you're feeling low and obviously don't feel like eating, so that is why you're not eating much, so you're going to have weight loss. And with atypical symptoms, if you're binge eating or stress eating, obviously there'll be weight gain. There are unexplained headaches and backaches. A lot of patients will come with this, that sar dukta rehta, idhar dukta hai. And there'll be shifting pain, there'll be no consistent pain, there'll be no consistent position. They'll say, give you different variable places that this is paining. Then a lot of times, especially in kids, they'll come with stomach aches, or there's something called as IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, where sometimes they're having constipation, sometimes they're having loose motions, or there'll be change in bowel habits. Now, this is just a gist of all the symptoms that we have been talking about constantly. Now, it is a vicious cycle. What happens is maybe something that I'm trying to do is not working out. Maybe I've started a new business and it is not working out the way I expected. So obviously I start worrying about it. What is it? Why is it not working out? So that creates a lot of anxiety, a lot of worries. Things become black and white, as in, I can either life is good or it is bad. That whole gray area is just gone. I'm not able to think in that particular area. And since we have started feeling low and we are only looking either at the positive, extreme positive, or extreme negative aspect of life, so obviously things get harder. If something is happening slightly better, also you're not able to perceive that or feel happy for it. And they keep on trying hard because that negative thought process has already started developing. And then since we are worrying constantly, so there are sleep issues, and then there's a lot of dreaming. In depressive symptoms, there are a lot of bad dreams about maybe death, or about horrible things happening to them, or deaths of relatives, or they may have some very weird dreams that probably I'm just falling off the hill, or something has come and fallen on me. So distressing thoughts, distressing dreams. And a lot of time when they get up, like when we have a proper sleep and we are comfortable, we get up fresh till a new day, we'll start something new, and we have that zest and energy to do something. But these people, even to get out of bed, it's a task for them, even to get up and push themselves to go to the washroom and brush their teeth and start their day. It's a very difficult thing. And since they're already struggling with all this, so life becomes all the more harder, and this thing just goes on and on and on. So it's very important to break the cycle. Now, what happens is our relatives, the loved ones, as much as they may love us, but they're not able to understand what we are going through. So in general, depression is going to be having these presentations, but in different age groups, there can be some different presentations. The most important factors that I'm going to talk about are the risk factors and the presentation difference, if any. Now, about children, children basically a lot of times they are not able to understand what they themselves are going through. Okay, so when I don't understand what I am going through, how am I going to even explain what is happening to me? And they are resistant because we just see that the child has become irritable or the child is become stubborn. Mostly that is a lot of times that the presentation is there. And we as parents, what happens a lot of times, we just feel that we have explained things to our child and we have done our part. But nowadays, even a 3.5, 4-year-old kid can tell you what they are feeling or why they're doing certain things. So it's very important to talk to your children. Now, risk factors would be family discord. Now, as I have mentioned before, our parents are our first teachers, and whatever we see our parents doing is something that we copy. As simple as if it's a girl child, then she'll see that mama combs her hair like that, or she puts the lipstick like that. Or if it's a boy, then he'll do like this. If his father is making up his hair, or put his collar in a certain way, how the father puts. So if he's seeing constant fights between the parents, or if he's seeing that they're disrespectful to each other, or if there is even verbal abuse, or a loud volume of voice that is used at home, they are going to be taking that, and it is certainly going to affect them. If there's bullying in school, now what happens? Not every child, God has made each one of us in a different manner, right? So how we spoke about personality and our defense mechanisms when I gave the example of the dog. So similarly, there are some kids who are not very, vocal about things, and obviously, they are having a different upbringing at home, and they've never faced those circumstances. So the kids who are weaker, maybe in academics or from being able to take a stand for themselves, a lot of times they are bullied in school, as simple as kids making fun of their hair or their clothes or their bags, or teasing them with different names, or even going to the extent of hitting them. And they threaten them that we'll do this if you tell ma'am, or if you tell the teacher, or if you tell your parents. And because of fear, the children keep tolerating that and keep it venting inside. If there's any physical, sexual, or emotional abuse, sexual abuse in children is something that we yes, of course, we don't want any kid to go through that, but unfortunately, it is very, very common. So, whenever you have a child with any kind of complaints, do take the child in a corner, try to be a little comforting and ask them if someone has disrespected them, or spoken to them, or touched them in an inappropriate way. Obviously, you'll have to speak in a language appropriate to what the child can understand. If there's a family history of parental depression, of course, there's genetic predisposition, ethical and cultural factors. A lot of time, I'm seeing a teenager right now, and he very clearly tells me that my boundaries of religion and or the religious aspect or the religious understanding is very different from my family, and that is constantly creating havoc at home. Homelessness, obviously, that is not something very difficult to see in our city. There's refugee status that's, all of a sudden they've had to leave their home and go somewhere else, and, change in financial status, change in the environment they are living in, change in the people around them. And if there are institutional settings that kids are staying in, maybe remand homes, or even child homes or something like that, children home or something like that. Now, if there is constant bickering between parents, a lot of times what I see is specifically mothers, they're not happy in the relationship. So they're just pulling on with the relationship, with sexual and physical abuse happening and emotional abuse happening, even on the father or other family members' front, but they're just moving on with life because they have children to look after, because what will happen to my children's future, or because what will the society say, or the most common thing is, where do I go? Because they don't have that kind of support where they can go to. If there are deaths in the family, of course, if they have lost a loved one. I'm seeing a teenager where he lost his grandmother, whom he was very, very attached to. And the mother brought him that, he's become very irritable, and, he doesn't listen to things, and he keeps getting angry. So on probing, on talking to him, I realized that, these behavioral changes have only started after he lost his grandmother. And it had increased to an extent where, since depression was not treated, the child developed psychotic symptoms where he could actually see his grandmother standing near the basin or lying on the bed and stuff. So obviously we are treating him with medications, and obviously we will be working with him too from adjustment point of view. If there's abuse, if there is a parent who's always shouting, who's always scolding, um like if there is conflict between the parents, and where will the mother remove her frustration? So she'll either beat up the child or keep scolding him, or we keep telling the child whenever child is making a mistake, we are very prompt in telling them that what this thing that you're doing is not good, or what you did is wrong. But when it comes to appreciation, we are a little back foot behind them. Their new location, a lot of times, with the change in the parents' work or job profile, or due to some other issues, financial issues, there are relocations. So a new place, trying to make new friends, trying to adjust in a new society, trying to adjust in a new school with new teachers, it does become a task for a lot of kids. And illness, like recently I've been seeing a girl, she's hardly 16 years old, she's had MDR TB. So she's struggling with that for last 1 year, taking IM injections for at least 6 months, and you're constantly popping in pills for her TB, not being able to do her routine life. She's seeing her other teenage friends who are going out, having fun, attending college, attending classes, but she's unable to because of her illness. Now, a very, very important thing that I would like to talk about is academic difficulties, because as kids, we feel that, बच्चे को problem क्या है, खाली तो पढ़ाई तो करनी है, उसको क्या tension है. This is the most common statement that I get from parents. Now, what happens is we have certain expectations from our children. Although we might not be toppers, we might not be getting a 70 and 80%, we might be kids who just scraped through, but we always want our kids to be toppers or among the highest scorers in class. But you have to understand that each child has his own capacity. Every child cannot come first, every child cannot be a topper, every child cannot get an 80%. So there's something called as mental retardation, but there's something called as borderline intellectual functioning. Those are the kids who keep struggling the most, because we feel that नहीं बाकी सब तो ठीक है, but then I don't know why he has issues with studies, वो क्यों grasp नहीं करता है, हिसाब थोड़ा बहुत कर लेता है. When there's mental retardation, there are frank symptoms, but then when there's borderline intellectual functioning, because they're not into mental retardation, they are not into normal IQ. It is a range between 70 to 90, that is the IQ range, where they are called as borderline intellectual functioning. Then ADHD, extremely important, extremely common, extremely neglected. So ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It has 3 aspects to it. There's hyperactivity, there's impulsivity, and there's inattention. Now, because of hyperactivity and impulsivity, the child is constantly into fights. There are constant fights at home, like specifically if they're staying in a joint family, because the mother has to keep running after the child. So if there are multiple kids in the house, then chalte chalte kisi ko tapli maar diya, press someone's finger, or just push someone while walking or while playing, get into fights frequently. Every time the child will, you always have to be very cautious कि अभी गिरा तभी गिरा. They'll have multiple falls, multiple hurts that they'll keep getting. So the parent has to be very vigilant. So it starts taking a toll on them, and they just feel that this child is very naughty, बहुत मस्ती खोर है. Now, just last Sunday, I had gone for lunch outside. There was some party, and I heard this woman saying next to me that no, I don't get my daughter. She's always running. She's very naughty. I can't handle her. I avoiding going out, and if I go out, then I don't get her. Now, probably that child does have hyperactivity, but we just label it कि मस्ती खोर है, बदमाश है, so we keep it aside. There's impulsivity wherein the child can't wait in a queue. They're standing, if they've gone to a shop or something, they're standing in the queue, they'll keep on peeping in, कि मेरा number कब आएगा, मेरा number कब आएगा. If they're playing with kids, if they are maybe playing a game, then every time it's like पहले मैं, that I have to, they can't wait for their turn. They just have so much of energy pent up inside that they just don't know how to do it. So they remove hyperactivity in these forms, like, they're just running around for no apparent reason. If the parents are talking, then they'll keep coming and disturbing. Now, at least this part is seen where hyperactivity is moderate or severe. But when it comes to inattention, the parent will only say कि पढ़ाई नहीं करता है, टीचर की कंप्लेन आती रहती है कि अब ध्यान नहीं देता है. But here also we have to understand that inattention is a silent part of ADHD, which goes unnoticed most of the times. The child has the IQ, the child has that much of intelligence, but because of inattention, they're not able to pay attention, and hence it affects their performance. Now, there's something called a specific learning disability. Specific learning disability is when the child's IQ is normal, but they have difficulties only and only with studies. So the parent will come, सब चीज में तो अच्छा है, सब में अच्छा दिमाग चलता है, पैसे भी समझ आता है, सब आता है, बस पढ़ाई में नाटक करता है. Now, why they feel कि नाटक करता है? That is the most common word that I have seen, and on diagnosis I found the kids to be having dyslexia. So dyslexia is when they are having difficulty reading, like even recognition of basic words is very difficult for them. Pronunciation of words is difficult for them. To understand what they are reading is difficult for them. So when you're struggling with identifying something, how are you going to be able to grasp it and understand it and apply it in any way? Then there's dysgraphia. Some parents will say बहुत गंदा handwriting है, क्या लिखता है समझ में नहीं आता है. There'll be a lot of spelling mistakes, and it will be so untidy that teachers are just giving, they may know their matter, but they're unable to put it down on paper. And obviously the teacher feels that this kid doesn't know anything, so academic backwardness is there. Dyscalculia, they have difficulty in mathematics. So most of the time, this academic difficulties, why I concentrated on this is because it very frequently it gets neglected because parents don't understand what is happening, and even as doctors, a lot of them do not understand that why the child is doing so. So if there are IQ issues, you see how to deal with that. If there's ADHD, there's always occupation therapy that we have, and medications that can be used in severe or moderate to severe cases. And the specific disability where the government does give concession, we can get them evaluated properly from government centers, and they need special educators who can teach them techniques to learn in a better manner. Now, we have to understand that a child will not come and say, if you ask the child, "Beta, are you feeling sad?" They are not going to say, "No, I'm not feeling sad," because they don't know what sadness means. So, a lot of times you will see that most important thing is the irritability and excess crying. Choti bhi cheez hai, they keep crying. Then there's withdrawal, they stop going out, playing with their friends, or they keep quiet. If it's a very chatty child, they have started being within themselves, they have reduced talking, they have reduced interacting, there's change in appetite. A lot of times the parents get their children ki khata nahi hai, but obviously there will be a lot of reasons. Sleep patterns. Now, when there is ADHD, obviously there's going to be a reduction in sleep. So they just find that these problems are there, but to understand that probably the child is suffering with something is something that we have to help them. There's loss of interest in activities. The parent may say she used to love sketching, she used to love drawing and painting, but now she just doesn't want to do it. Even if she takes 5 minutes, she keeps it away. Then if they used to like going out and probably playing racket or playing football with friends, playing cricket, they've stopped doing that. So in kids, basically you have to look for these behavioral changes. With kids, it's difficult to get out what they are feeling. It takes time to develop a rapport with them. So the first session is usually just about making a rapport when we talk about Superman or Spider-Man or their favorite cartoon, and just try and understand probably what the child is going. I had this child who would keep running away from the house. The mother was very tired of him because obviously he was a young man, maybe around 10 years or something, but it was very simple. If I tell him anything, he will run away from the house. Now, to a certain extent, it was attention seeking behavior in that child. But when children feel that, I can't cope up with it and it's getting too difficult for me, then worst come to worst, very few cases, but you do find these things. There was one child who would just, if anything happened at home, he would just go to his uncle's place, different uncle's place. Or so the parents' errand would be, if you've scolded him, you have to go and call up every relative and try and understand where he is. Then after a day or two, when he settles down, go convince him to come back home. Separation anxiety and school refusal. This is the most common presentation. Now the parents will only say that he's not going to school. He doesn't want to go to school. If I take him towards the gate, then he starts crying. If the same thing he's at home at that time, there will be nothing. But as soon as you take the name of that, you probably have to go to school, they start crying. So probably there's something that is troubling them. A lot of times there's depressive symptoms underlying. Maybe they don't like the teacher, maybe they don't like studies, like they are having some academic issues, or maybe there are certain friends that they don't like, or they are being bullied, or they are not being able to make friends, or the teacher is too strict, or there are some incidences, maybe death or something has happened in the family why the child has started feeling insecure. So there can be multiple reasons where there's school refusal. You have to understand the reason, try and work it out, and once the child feels better, they get back to school. Complaints of boredom. Now, unfortunately, this is something which we are finding very commonly in COVID right now, because the kids are having no schools, no playtime, there's no routine that they are having. So, I mean, Mama, I finished cycling. What do I do now? Mama, I finished drawing. What do I do now? So, there is a sudden change in their daily routine. Then academic difficulties we've already spoken about. There's antisocial behavior. To a great extent, it has also to be on the experiences or the exposure that they're having at home, or if they are seeing or idealizing someone with similar behavior. Right now, TV is something that is causing a lot of encouragement of not so good behavior. And again, God has made us in a different manner. So personality is something. So till 18 years of age, personality doesn't develop. We don't label it as personality. But gradually, as per the behavior of the child, if there's early intervention, this can be prevented, or at least changed to a certain extent. Then insomnia, the child will either keep lying in bed, or they will keep getting up in the middle of the night scared with the scary dreams or something like that, and they'll wake up the parents. There's change in their eating patterns and change in their weight. Now, in kids, school refusal, school performance. These are the two very important things that whenever there is a child, you always ask about this. Now in adolescence, again, there's a lot of peer pressure that is there. Maybe I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, I don't have talent, I can't do it. So a lot of expectations that we have from ourselves, and more so than that, we always want to please others as adolescents. We want to prove ourselves that I'm also an individual and I'm good enough. So there's this constant pressure of proving to others. And there's a lot of self-doubt, which to a great extent has been inculcated in us through our childhood. It's difficult being a teenager. Why do I say so? Because our parents itself, they don't understand whether we are kids or we are adults now. So if they say something, or if they say that they've not done some particular task that we've asked them, इतना बड़ा हो गया है तुझे समझ में नहीं आता. So we ourselves are confused whether the child is a little child or they are grown up. So when we are confusing our behavior, even the child doesn't know what to do about it, because your expectations are different from the child in different situations. So of course, they themselves are going through so much of change, there's so much of hormonal change, there's this identity crisis that a lot of them are facing. They're trying to find their own individualism, they're trying to find themselves. And in that, if we are going to keep on, changing our expectations without even talking to them, then it's difficult for you and for them. Of course, being a parent is not easy. So again, there'll be a lot of doubts. There'll be, probably I can't do it. I'm not good enough. Now, I was seeing this girl. She would go to college. She would want to make friends, but she was very worried about talking to anyone. She was having a lot of social anxiety as to what if people make fun of me, what if people don't like me. So that need to please everyone, that was causing a lot of anxiety. Now that need to please, one, we have to understand we can't please each and every person, that is out of human limitations. Second, if you're confident about yourself, then you will be confident talking to anyone. So a lot of this has to do with self-esteem. There's lots of interest. We will feel that, I had this child who was a very good scorer, probably she scored somewhere around 85-90% in her 10th. But there was a sudden decline in her 12th score. Now, there can be variable reasons in that, sudden freedom is there. There's no one to look after your attendance, and parents can't really keep a tab whether you've gone to college or what you have done. So there's bunking. So there's enjoyment of life. That could be one thing. Another, adjustment issues, career pressures that can lead to depression. That can also be one of the reasons for deterioration in academics. Then withdrawal from friends and family. A lot of teenagers, most of that time, when you talk to them, they'll say that my parents don't understand me, or it's too difficult to make elders understand. So they feel that probably they don't understand me, so they start shutting them off away from people who care for them. There'll be a lot of crying spells. Mothers specifically will say, specifically with girls, it will happen that she just keeps crying for no other reason. I just tell her one thing and then she starts crying. So it's even difficult to talk to her, but we're not understanding that she's probably struggling with something. That is why that thing is happening. Then again, sleep issues, loss of appetite. Parents will say that, she goes in the morning, she doesn't have breakfast, she will not have anything. Once she comes back at 5 and 6 o'clock in the evening, she'll eat something. So there is appetite change, which they feel is probably because they're too busy, or probably they're eating something outside. Now, there are a lot of hormonal changes that are happening. There are a lot of emotional changes. Because of hormonal changes, there are a lot of new experiences that they are having. A lot of them, they have never understood what ghabrahat becheni is. They never heard those words before, probably. But now they themselves are feeling those weird feelings, I'm restless. Even if I sit, I'm not comfortable. If I'm lying down, I'm not comfortable. I just don't understand what to do. Then there are situational stresses. A lot of, as soon as the child goes in 6th, 7th, 8th, we start having expectations. And the first question we ask meeting a teenager is, "Are aage kya karna hai?" So there are a lot of pressure as to academically क्या करना है, आगे लाइफ में क्या करना है, कौन सा प्रोफेशन चूज करना है, कितने मार्क्स लाने हैं, दूसरों का क्या आया. There's a lot of comparison also that is happening. Now, family history, obviously, if there's been a family history of any psychiatric illnesses, then you have to keep a watch on that. Now, this is the time when they're experimental with a lot of substances. Probably you'll see that the first cigarette exposure is around 8 to 9 standard, 7th, 8th, 9th standard. That is pretty early. So, no, my friend was taking it, so we just wanted to try it, and I felt nice. And then once they get into college, they have a little pocket money in hand, and there's no one to keep a constant check on them. And plus, there's peer pressure if you're into that kind of friend circle. So, that is when they start experimenting. They start with experimenting on, अरे ये तो लड़की है, ये क्या करेगा, under peer pressure that probably you can't do it, and just trying to do that, or trying to impress others, or just to get that high, or to have that new feeling, they gradually get into abuse and dependence. Now we have spoken about this one very important thing that we don't talk about are romantic issues. I mean, infatuation, crushes, liking. This is something very, very common. I mean, it's a natural feeling that all of us have, and it's probably a phase that all of us go through. And this is more so, probably in teenagers and early adolescents. This is something which is very common. But if I ask the parent about it, they'll be no, no, नहीं हमारा बच्चा ये सब नहीं करता है, ये सब गलत काम नहीं है. But you have to understand that that is a very natural instinct that God has given us. We all have that instinct, how much ever we may try to negate it. So whenever there is a teenager, with all confidence and confidentiality, you have to talk about it, because a lot of time they've just started with that feeling, and it's a different feeling that they've never had before, and they have different expectations from themselves, and because of those likings and attractions, there may be normal bodily functions like erection and early morning discharge and stuff that may happen, or there might be semen that is released in the urine because of I mean there's no source of ejaculating it out. So obviously there's a lot and lot of misconceptions that a lot of teenagers or adolescents have about these basic things, which no one talks to them about it, and whatever they're talking or they're trying to find out is through sources like friends who are their age or slightly elder to them, or through the internet and stuff, and obviously they're not getting appropriate knowledge. I have seen so many adolescents come with, there is dhat jata hai, or there's white discharge that is going out in my urine, so I feel so weak. Am I not a man? And why does this happen to me? So that is just sheer lack of knowledge. So and they really develop really severe depressive symptoms because of it, because they're not able to talk about it. They're ashamed to talk about it, and even if they gather the courage to talk to an elder about it, they're shut down. Okay, you're wrong. How can even you talk about it, and how can this even happen to you? So these are things that are very, very important to talk to your clients. Another thing is peer pressure. I mean, even right now when you all are in college, or even me as a doctor, there is always peer pressure that does happen. Peer pressure can be positive, it can be negative. Positive is good, negative is certainly bad. But which influence are you going to let affect you? How much of it is going to affect your way of living, and how much of it is affecting your confidence? Very, very important. So now everyone, I mean, this is Facebook, but later on I was made to realize by a teenager that Facebook is for elderly. We are more on Insta and Twitter. We don't even touch Facebook. So from that status to the number of followers that I'm having, how many likes do I get when I'm posting something on Instagram, or that Instagram algorithm and stuff, which is really out of my understanding. So these things are something which is very, very important for them. It's an extremely important aspect of life. I had this kid in college who was a college going student, and she was like, I feel so ashamed of discussing all this with my friends, because I like Khatro Ke Khiladi and they talk about I don't know what not. So I can't really have a conversation with them because they make fun of whatever I like watching, and I don't know what they are talking about. So even things like this are very important. Now, we have to realize and make them understand that everything that they're posting on Instagram, or Twitter or Facebook, it's not the complete reality of life. That may be just a very small aspect of what their life is, or teeny mini just a gist of it. Whenever we put some post, it is only the best part of our life. If I'm going to a zoo, a local zoo, I'm not going to put up pictures of that. But yeah, if I'm going to a foreign zoo, I'm certainly going to put it out. And if I'm wearing a normal fashion street dress, I may not put up pictures, but if I'm wearing a Zara suit, I'm certainly going to put it up. So we are always portraying to be the best, and always trying to project that our life is perfect. And as many posts that we are going through is basically the best part, or the best moment of that individual at that particular point of time. So no one is going to project that, oh, I have a bad hair day, or I'm not looking good today. If they're looking good, they're going to post that. If they're not looking good, they're not going to post that. So we have to understand that each and every moment can't be perfect. We can't compare our lives to others because they are different individuals. We are different individuals. Their life circumstances are different. Our life circumstances are very different. So this part is something also that I usually talk to kids about. Now, why high risk factors? Because poor school outcomes, that could be because of academic issues or probably some form of struggle that the child is going to have. A lot of worries about the future, what will happen, and more than something that we are thinking about, it is more of the stress that the society has burdened us with it. Then poor relationships, if they've not learned, if they have had experiences of poor relationships, like I have a lot of adolescents who see constant fighting and bickering about parents. They have just made up their mind that I never want to get married or I never want to get into a relationship because that is the kind of portrayal that they are seeing. Alcohol and drug abuse. Now, suicide, I've been talking, I've taken that word a lot of times, and we feel scared to talk to someone that, are you feeling suicidal? We feel that we may put that idea into their head that, probably they can commit suicide, or, they can harm themselves also. But it is very important. A lot of times, unexpectedly, you will get that answer that, no, I do feel like that. And then you have to explore and talk to them about it. You can't just brush it off that, no, 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 you shouldn't be talking about it. You shouldn't be thinking about it. It's haram, or, you should not. What will happen to your family and stuff. When we are doing this, we are disregarding their feelings. So you have to explore that aspect and try to understand why that feeling has come in. And most of the time, there's underlying depression that is there. So, with adolescents, it's very difficult for parents to understand what is happening with their kids because a lot of times they feel that, these are the usual teenage issues that are there, that they don't want to hang out with the family more, the friends have become more important, or they are arguing about everything. So, a lot of times parents are not able to pick up those signs. So, it's a difficult job being a parent. You sometimes have to be a friend, sometimes you have to be very strict, sometimes you have to play different roles at different times, and you will have to be a judge of when to do what. Not every child is the same, not every parent is the same, and not every situation is the same. So, in a similar situation, if you have 3 kids, you will have to probably deal with them in a different manner. So, that is what, because teenagers is something that we made into such a big issue, and we always say that teenagers now, there's always going to be trouble, all the best. So we put such a negative aspect to it that even when the child is struggling with something, it becomes difficult to pick it up. Now, how do you manage in children and kids? It is not just popping in pills, believe me. It's about a lot of love and affection that you have to show them. It's about the support where, and conversations where rather than just explaining things to them, you always also have to listen to them and be receptive to it and not disregarding their feelings. Even if they are feeling low or they are having some negative feelings, it's, important to tell them that it's okay to feel like that. It's okay that you don't feel happy all the time. It's okay that you're struggling with something. It's okay that you can come and talk to me about it, as simple as even the crushes that you're having, or if you're having some issues in school or in college. Very important that till you don't open up a channel of conversation for them. You are a parent, so it is something that you will have to open up. When the child feels that my parents are okay about listening to it, and they're not going to judge me, or they are not going to negate my feelings all of a sudden, it is only then that they'll start talking to you. If you tell me that, no, my child, how much I tell them, you talk to me, you can tell me anything, I'm your friend, but they don't tell me, then you need to work on your relationship. Education, we have to understand the capacity of the child, the IQ of the child, and have similar expectations. You can't compare your child to others. Stop comparing kids. Stop saying that, even if your child got 18 out of 20, stop saying that, there are other people who got 20. Appreciate them. If they always, what you do is you compare the progress of the child with themselves. Okay. And if you feel that your child is having difficulty somewhere, rather than just telling them or, scolding them, talk to them, try to understand their feelings. We teach them to enjoy when they have success, but we don't teach them how to cope with difficult situations of failures. So our child is going to understand or learn to deal with it only through us. So that is something that we have to teach them. Now, very unfortunately, I see that kids or teenagers, they don't have adequate time for rest and sleep and play. We have to make a particular timetable, not very stringent, but where they have time for studies, they have time for homework, they have time to spend with the family, they have adequate time to play for screen time, and they have some form of exercise. So very, very, very important thing is how your teenager will be really depends on how your relationship has been with them as a child and what kind of environment you have given them as a child. One thing that parents are really struggling with right now is screen time. Like, they're always seeing that the child is all on the laptop or either on the mobile or just watching TV. So with age, you have to see what time limits you have to give the child to be strict with screen time. If you're telling your child that no, you don't watch TV too much or you don't be on the phone and you yourself are doing that, then obviously they're not going to listen to what you're telling them. Kids follow what they see more than what they hear. Now there's something called as helicopter parenting, wherein you're too involved in your child's life. As a parent, you have to try and maintain a balance between giving them their space and being aware of what is happening in their life and being their support system. So very important to do that. A lot of us don't really give that much of importance to physical activities and exercise. If you inculcate that from a very early age, then certainly it will help them throughout their life. Now in adults, I'm not going to talk too much about it because this is something that it's very common, and a lot of aspect since we are becoming adults is something that we understand. One very important thing or major change that happens when someone enters into adulthood is marriage or relationships. So then relationships, fair enough, they're able to manage that, but marriage is something that to a great extent they have to learn to balance their parents or their family along with the new partner that they have, or the girl who has gone into someone else's family, for her to adjust to the new family, then becoming parents, having elderly parents, getting the financial responsibility of the house, being the basic breadwinner, being the basic caretaker of the family, or being the homemaker of the house. These major changes do happen in life. It takes adjustment, but some people do struggle with it. So we should obviously talk about it. Financial responsibilities, yes, specifically with now COVID happening, there's a lot of job insecurity. People have lost jobs. Those who are having jobs are overburdened. There's been a salary cut. There's been, the incentives that you used to get, they have reduced. The expenses are the same, or, it's become even expensive. But the source of income is same or it's reduced. So that is something that is really creating a lot of problems for adults right now. A lot of people have lost a lot of loved ones during COVID, or we're constantly having insecurity. Constantly, there's a change in our way of living. There's a change. We're not going out that often. We're always scared. We're hearing a lot of negative news. So, because of all this, there's a lot of anxiety that has increased, and a lot of depressive symptoms because of that. And few people, in a way of trying to cope with all these stressors, they get into addiction where they feel, if I smoke a little more cigarette, I feel a little more peaceful. If I take maybe a peg of alcohol or whiskey, sorry, it makes me feel better. So they can get towards that also. So addiction, you have to see whether there are depressive symptoms. That's the first thing that you see. Now, I did talk to you about COVID in a little, in a gist. So, COVID is creating a lot of issues wherein there are a lot of patients of anxiety. Out of 10, 8 patients are coming with anxiety and underlying depression and stress. There's been a sudden lifestyle change. Kids are not going to school, people are working from home, and things like that. So, where the families used to be away throughout the day now and just come during the evenings and be together and be happy. Now they're staying together with Mumbai having small homes, there's constant pressure. Some people have lost jobs or financial issues, financial crunches. So a lot of relationship equations have changed during COVID. Now, there are some changes that you will see between children, adolescents, and adults. There will be some difference in presentation. A lot of times in adolescents and adults, you feel that नहीं वो बाहर खेलने जाता है तो he's better. But when he comes back home, he goes back to the same. But with adults, that fluctuation is not there. It is pervasive. Like even after change in the environment, the depressive symptoms remain the same. Now, elderly. Why elderly? Because they are the most neglected. Not that we do it on purpose, but we ourselves get so involved in our other routine that we are not able to give them that much of time. Now it goes unrecognized most of the times. We just feel that now they have nothing to do, and with age, so they become quieter and stuff, or they become irritable because umar बढ़ गया है, or they've started forgetting because they are becoming old. So for a lot of things that they have, we just label it as age. Now they have atypical symptoms wherein they'll always be tired. There's a lot of weight loss, so they constantly keep on complaining of different pains. Now I understand with elderly or in the geriatric age group, there are going to be memory issues, which are going to be age related or related to dementia. But when a patient says, "No, I am forgetting," that is probably called as pseudo dementia. That is a sign of depression. So that is something that you really have to look out for. If there are behavioral issues, like they used to go out for namaz in the mosque, or they used to go to the temple once or twice a week, or there was this group of friends that they used to hang around, but they've stopped doing that. They can't take care of themselves. Even bathing, we have to help them. Or he's not eating properly, so I have to keep being behind him that you need to eat. Or their food intake and stuff has reduced. So these are the behavioral changes. These are the atypical symptoms that you specifically find in adults. Now, when you start aging, you gradually, after a certain age, you start losing people that you loved, maybe a partner or maybe your siblings or close relatives, friends. So, a lot of emotional changes are happening. Plus, the kids get elderly, so sorry, they become adults, so they start taking responsibility of the house. Like your position is being taken over by someone else. Obviously it's a good thing, but then that emptiness does sink in when now you feel that there's not much of purpose that you have to do, or there's a lot of empty hand in time, or the kind of importance that kids used to give you before. For every decision they had to take your opinion or your permission, now that is not happening. So that authority is gradually slipping off. You've been busy working, now you've retired. So now what, you've been a very busy person working and now you're retired, so you really have nothing to do. I have this patient, so he was a restaurant owner, and now because of something he has stopped the restaurant. So after that he's had such a fall in emotions and such severe depressive symptoms. Now the main thing is getting back into a routine. Obviously you can't expect them to take up a job, or even if they are, they will not get a job because of age. And even if they are managing somehow, they will not physically have that kind of capacity to cope up with things also. So adjusting to our own physical and our emotional and economical situation is also something that affects. So loneliness and isolation, because everyone, okay, I'm staying in a joint family, everyone is busy, the kids are busy with their school, the women in the house are busy with the household work, the sons are busy with their jobs and stuff. They have their own friends, they have their own social circle. So these are the things that is something that affects them. then they feel purposeless. No, मेरी कोई ज़रूरत ही नहीं है. Like if they used to go to the market, they have stopped because of some physical pain, some knee pain, or difficulty balancing, or too much of rain and they can't get out and stuff. So again, whatever purpose they were feeling, or they were feeling that I'm helpful in some manner, that also gradually reduces. Major health problems start coming up, wherein you rarely find anyone who doesn't have diabetes or blood pressure, or knee joint pain and other issues. Then a lot of medications come in, like um, most of them, they'll say I have this big box of medications and I have to take medicine for this and this and this. So obviously that starts taking a toll on them. And then they're constantly, after a certain age, there's this anticipation of death. As soon as we are born as human beings, we know that we are going to die someday. But when, we don't know. So when we are young, to a certain extent, we feel that, we are young right now, hopefully nothing will happen. But once you start aging, then that insecurity and that fear of death does come in. And while you were working, you were socially secure, you were financially secure, very, very important, where you never really had to ask money from anyone. Now, a lot of times nowadays, elderly, they do have their income and their savings and stuff, but then to that constant flow of money that was coming in has stopped. So whatever they have to survive on that, or take help financially from their kids, or the kids have taken over the financial responsibility. So that also causes a lot of distress to them. Bereavement means adjusting to the loss of a loved one. So they've been hearing a lot of it, because as you grow old, of course, there are deaths that are going to happen. So adjusting to that and then waiting for your impending death is something that really is a very difficult feeling. So health problems that we are talking about, there's diabetes, there's blood pressure, there are going to be eye issues, cataract, retinal issues, cardiac issues, so a lot of other issues that are going to be happening. So it may not, the depression in elderly will not be because of their age, but it will be more because of the issues that are rising because of growing age with respect to health and their functionality and their independence and self-sufficiency. What you have to do for them is try and make them active, get involved in other activities, try and maintain their social group. What happens is once they retire, they don't know what to do throughout the day. So, there's no plan when they get up. So you have to try to make a proper timetable for them. You can keep them active, have a proper physical exercise. Maybe if they can't walk, you can, decide on a particular time and go for walks along with them. So here, how we keep elderly occupied also becomes our responsibility. So what happens is most of the times people struggle with depression. They just pull through and they just put in efforts to try and cope up, but they're always reluctant to take help because of the immense amount of misconception about depression that is there. Now there are medications that are there, and obviously psychotherapy. I'm not going to get into the medicine part, but we just have to understand that unfortunately, even if they need antidepressants, it's not addictive or habit forming, and these are not like a regular cold and cough medicines that you give medicines to and they're going to be fine tomorrow. They take a minimum period of 2 to 3 weeks to start showing some amount of positive effects. Now, there's always a question as to why do I need to take the medicines or antidepressants for such a long time? So there's this recovery phase, there's continuation phase, and maintenance phase. Now, whenever there's discontinuity in medications, there are a good amount of chances that they are going to be relapsing symptoms. They may be fine for a few days and then again the symptoms relapse. So they don't understand that it is the need of the body which is causing those relapses, but they just feel that it is because of an addiction or they've got dependent on their medication. So we all have scars and we all have a stories. For every behavior, there is a reason. What you have to do is, when things are getting too much to handle, take a little break, keep physical activity as part of your life, have a healthy lifestyle, have a well-balanced diet, sleep and rest is equally important. Try and avoid any kind of substance use. understand your limitations and make realistic goals. Like if it's a Sunday and you think there are 5 things you need to do, but there are certain things which are important that have to be done, and that is the capacity with the time limitations you have. Keep realistic goals. This percentage that I need to get, or this career that I need to take. Understand what are your limitations, how much is your intelligence, and keep those realistic goals. Be there for your family and friends. Emotional support is something which is extremely important. There are very little things which are in our hand, and a lot of them which are not in our hand. So we have to be realistic and understand that we can change things that are in our hand, and other things which are not in our hand, we have to learn to go with the flow. If you feel, it's a very simple thing that that I believe in. If you're too happy or if you're too sad, never make any commitments or never take any decisions at that point of time. Things are not always going to be hopeless. There's always going to be a ray of light at the end of tunnel. And always seek help. See, we have to face the situation, whatever it may be, but you can do it with help and in much more peaceful manner rather than just struggling through it. Whenever you need, always have some person whom you can talk to. Not that you have to say each and everything, but a lot of times just talking to someone about something can give you a lot of peace of mind. Yeah, there's always hope. We can always cope up with things and thrive, and we'll come up high. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I would request Dr. Vinita ma'am to start question answer session.
Hello. Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
Hello. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Ma'am, the session is very nice, but there are some questions from the PG students.
Sure.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Could you please mention and explain what is the age criteria we start from the to label or diagnose in children for depression? Yes.
See, the pediatric age group, there's no age criteria per se. I can see patients who are even 4-year-old who can come up with depression. But obviously, see a lot of factors that come into depression even in children. So you can't say that a 4-year-old can't be depressed, and you can't say a 9 or 10-year-old can be depressed. It depends on the severity. So once the child is in a state of understanding, like I just saw a kid yesterday, she was not even 2 years old, but her mother was a patient. So even that time she could understand, Mama, you're crying. She went and she hugged the child. So even a 2-year-old can have those kind of emotions when they're seeing that around them.
Okay, ma'am. So on the basis of that, we diagnose that this is a case of depression.
See, with kids, parents usually get them with behavioral issues and academic issues, because behavioral, yes, they have to manage. So when it's getting out of hand, that is the time. Now, a lot of times the parents get with behavioral issues, but when you start talking to the child, the parents will say, no, how can my child be depressed? Not possible. And then when you start exploring the child, develop a rapport with the child, then you understand there are some underlying depressive symptoms.
Okay. And ma'am, isn't the medication for the adult and for the children are same?
Medications are same. Of course, the dosage has to be adjusted as per the body weight and age of the child. As far as medications go in kids, me or any doctor for a matter of fact, we prefer to delay it as much as possible. First, we try on with psychotherapy, but most of the times what happens is the patients are brought with either severe symptoms or, on the higher side of moderate. So that is a time where you do need medications, unfortunately.
Okay. And ma'am, that antidepressant medicines that you already told in your session, but antidepressant has some side effects. How we aware children with giving that, and how we will take care of them?
Yeah, so usually how it is you always start low and go slow. You start with the minimum dose first, and then you increase it very slowly, keeping a regular follow-up of 10 to 15 days. And along with that, you do start with psychotherapy. Now, in kids, what happens is a lot of times they themselves are not able to understand what's happening with them. Now, if there's ADHD and if it is affecting their performance, it is affecting their relationships at home, their frequent school complaints, it is affecting their academic performance, then we would consider medications. But if it is not that functionally deteriorating, then first we go for occupation therapy, see how they respond to it, and then you consider medications.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, okay. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, there is questions in the chat box. The current COVID scenario contributed in increasing the rate of people in suffering from depression. Yes, ma'am.
It has significantly, and more than depression, I think it's more of anxiety that is flaring up. And those anxiety or panic episodes, they give you so much of distress. You know, there's this feeling of impending death, and it's a very horrible feeling. So, because of that, those panic attacks or anxiety episodes, depression is developing secondary to that. But they go, anxiety and depression a lot of time go hand in hand.
Okay, ma'am. Then how will we get rid of that depression after COVID?
So right now, if they need help, we start off with medications, and obviously psychiatric treatment is just not merely popping in pills. So it's a thought disorder. Depression is basically a thought disorder. So you start talking to them. Try to find out where the error of thoughts are or what the insecurities are. Like how I have mentioned, there are few things in our hand and a lot of things not in our hand. So if there is COVID, and so what we try to do is work with the things that are in our hand, like my family environment, my way of living, how I control my emotions, when I hear a death news or a negative news about someone's health, how I try to relax myself, or if I need medications, how I stay compliant to it, or if there is no job, then how I try to keep a little positivity and try to search for a job, or if I already have a job and there's too much of work pressure, then how I learn to cope up with it. So we work on ourselves. We can't change the situation.
Yes.
So we learn to adjust to it.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, there is one question. How we differentiate between the depression and inferiority complex?
These are two very different things. Depression is an illness, and inferiority complex will be depression will be probably because of inferiority. We feel we are less than others, either because of that, or that feeling can come because of depression. They are different things, but they can go hand in hand. So if it is because of depression, you treat depression, that will get all right. And if depression is because of the feeling of inferiority, then you work on your self-esteem and confidence.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, there is question from how to differentiate depressive symptoms from the behavior and conduct disorders in children, since irritability and stubbornness are also the symptoms of depression.
Talk, conversation. Okay, so when you start talking to them, you will have to understand how I start working with the patient is I speak to the parents separately, try to get a background of what is happening and when the child is behaving in what way, and then I speak to the child separately, because a lot of times they're not going to be able to open up in front of the parents. So when you talk to the child, why they are behaving in that way, have they made it as a protective mechanism, or it is a personality issue that is coming up. When you start talking to them and try and rationalize it, it is only then that you realize why it is there. So anything you have to do is talk.
Talking to the patient. Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, there is neuromuscular coordination can get affected by depression.
See, basically in depression, there's a lot of lethargy and lack of confidence. So in the elderly, you'll see that they will say that, I think I'll fall while walking. Okay. Or if there's chakkar in adults or even children, then obviously they feel that, I will not be able to perform my task as simple as cooking or, going to the bathroom on my own. So obviously it is affecting it to some extent. But once you treat depression and those issues are because of depression, then gradually you can work on your confidence and get it sorted.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Okay. Over to you, Poonam.
Hello. Now I would request Dr. Arohi ma'am to give vote of thanks.
This was indeed a very enlightening session we have witnessed. At the outset, I, Dr. Arohi Mate, Assistant Professor in Medicine Department at YMT Homeopathic Medical College, take the opportunity to express the gratitude to all those who were instrumental in making this event a great success. First and foremost, I would like to express our gratitude to our chairman, sir, Dr. G.D. Pol, sir, who is a constant source of inspiration, support, and guidance. I would like to express our sincere thanks to our principal, Dr. Mrs. Page Madam, for providing encouragement for the national webinar. I also extend my thanks to our Vice Principal and Dean of MUHS, Dr. Bagal sir, for the enormous cooperation in the organization of this national webinar. I extend a very hearty vote of thanks to our HOD of Medicine Department, who is a professor, PG and PhD guide, Dr. Vasika Selia Madam, for encouraging us and giving us guidance for this event. I extend my gratitude to our speaker, Dr. Tehsin Madam, who is a consultant psychiatrist and psychotherapist, for her efforts in explaining the clinical approach of a phase of a depression in different stages of life. I would also like to thank my departmental colleagues, Dr. Chokakkar sir and Dr. Pol sir, who are associate professor in the medicine department at YMT Homeopathic Medical College, and Mr. Prashant Godse and his IT team for the technical arrangement. Also, I would like to thank Dr. Vinita Joshi, who is assistant professor in medicine department, for the conducting question and answer session. Well, an event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels start rolling weeks ago. It requires planning and bird's eye details. We have been fortunate enough to be backed up by the team of very motivated and dedicated colleagues at Dr. G.D. Pol YMT Homeopathic Medical College, who do their job and they are very result oriented. A special thanks to the organizing committee, teaching and non-teaching staff for their unflinching support and coordination. Our heartful thanks to the wonderful audience for their active participation. With these warm words and kind message, we move to the end of the national webinar. Thank you.